So, due to the fact that the anti-human agenda has been sped up, there's a lot more people talking about, asking me about intrusive thoughts and suicidal thoughts and what to do about it. So, I could sum it all up with the simplest thing. Let me start with that instead of saving it for the end. Yeshua ben Yosef told all of us, resist evil and it will flee. And it's true. It's a true spiritual principle, just like everything he ever said. Largely misunderstood, but if you understand any of the principles, they're always true. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that if you resist an evil thought, immediately it's going to cease, right? There's something going on here. Without going into the lore and the things that humans will get distracted by and miss the point of the spiritual principle, let me just tell you enough about it, and then we'll get into the mechanics and what you can do about this. There are beings on this planet that are not human, who, by their own free will, a very long time ago, decided to go ahead and intervene with humanity. They arrived, and initially, some of them even taught humans some useful things, but eventually, their greed, their ego, their own weakness spiritually took over, and they used humans like a slave race for experiments in slavery and nasty rituals and a food source and all kinds of things. Um, Eventually, through divine intervention and then some human efforts also, they were all wiped off the face of the earth. However, their DNA, the changes to the human DNA, still exist within us now, which is part of the problem, because when I say they were wiped off the face of the earth, let me correct myself. They never left. They were physically destroyed, but because they were so dark, so unrepentantly prideful and selfish, they have not been able to leave the earth. They can't approach God. They're earthbound. And they have been watching, manipulating, and taking over every aspect of humanity they can ever since. Now, without talking about names or origin stories or lore any more than that, let me describe to you how they operate. I've had the gift slash curse of seeing them, literally seeing them, working on myself and other people, as well as overhearing some of their conversations, things they say, seeing rituals they do. Sometimes I can see them, okay? Sometimes the veil is pierced for me. It might be because of the NDE I had when I was 2 years old. It might be just something that is part of the way the Maker set up my life to be. I don't know. I don't worry about that too much, but I've seen them. I've learned some things. I've observed some things, and I've watched what they do to people. Now, this is huge because they've got the world thinking that humans are so sadistically bad because you see how at the top, as they say, the most heinous, hideous, unthinkable things are done on purpose, ritualistically. What you don't understand is that is not human. Some of you might understand that. Some of you might wonder, but that is very much not human. The people in these families that have been kept in this cohesion by transgression lifestyle of dominating the planet with pure evil for a long time, those people don't really have free will over their lives. They've been taken by these beings I'm referring to that shall remain nameless, because I'm not even going to give them that respect or that focus from naming them. But this also works at the individual level. It's not just the so-called elites. See, the mark of the beast, if you will, okay, calling yourself elite, thinking you're a different species than other human beings. Now, why is that? You know, David Wilcock, who was recently shot, used to talk about the belief system of the cabal that runs the world and how they believe they're entirely different species. entirely higher species, higher on the food chain, and therefore they can do whatever they want with humans. Here's the thing, that's because they're not human. They may be operating through human bodies right now in positions of so-called leadership, but they're not human. Now, here's another thing I wanted to point out in this video. I've noticed I always feel weird bringing this up, but I have off the chart, immeasurable pattern recognition. On advanced IQ tests, I get all the questions right, which means it's unmeasurable. So I have a certain gift or ability to recognize patterns very well and everywhere. So here's a very simple one I've observed by having these third eye experiences where I've seen them doing things, heard their discussions. Sometimes they would say very negative things to me and I could hear it in an audible voice, but most of the time humans can't. But your brain, or maybe that's how it works. I don't know if it's the brain or it's your spiritual mind or how this works, but when they're saying these things to you, even if you don't hear it audibly, hissing and growling and all the things they do, you'll end up having the thoughts. You'll end up having the thoughts that correlate with it. So the simple pattern I was going to share is that I've noticed that humans run on a lot of spectrums. It's kind of like a wheel, and things are always facing each other in straight lines that are on spectrums. One of those being empathy and narcissistic tendencies. So if you're a person who is innately more on the empathetic side of the spectrum, more likely the way these beings will interact with you is to try to get you to destroy yourself. They want you to be so miserable eventually that you think you're pointless, that you're garbage, and that life is garbage, and they want you to give up and die one way or another. Whether it's through manifesting disease from being so miserable or killing yourself in a lot of cases. And they'll look for ways to set it up to break you with what hurts you the most personally, emotionally, to try to get you to do it. And to try to make a lot of events correlate with just crushing overwhelm to get you to make a bad decision. And give them what they want, which is your blood sacrifice. These sickos have always been about blood sacrifice. It's one of their many diseases that they've inflicted upon humanity. If you're more on the narcissistic side of the spectrum, they will tell you all kinds of good things about yourself, and they will build up your pride, and they will make you never doubt yourself. So even when you're doing hideous, abusive things, whether this is low-key, low-level, just individual, abusing your own children, say, and I'm not saying that's low level, but I'm talking about the difference between individuals like that versus world leaders who make decisions that cause countless people immeasurable amounts of suffering and death. If you're more toward that narcissistic side, they will actually build up your pride and they will give you things and they will put you more in charge and they will make you believe you're right, no matter how ridiculous you are. So when people ask me, what about intrusive thoughts and thoughts of suicide? I need help. This is what you need to understand, okay? There's a battle here. Someone is lying to you. Someone that can see and hear you and you don't see and hear them. But you do. You just don't realize you do. You don't really see them unless you have those third eye moments where you do. Even then, your third eye might interpret different visionary experiences. But this is all beside the point. The point is they're lying to you and they want you to kill yourself. And the good news is you're someone who's real down on yourself and these repeated intrusive thoughts are trying to get you to kill yourself. It's because you're a lot better person than you actually think you are. It's because they're angry at the creator. See, a long time ago, these beings didn't even realize that they weren't the greatest thing in the universe. In their experience, they thought they were. So they talked themselves. They became so deluded, they talked themselves into thinking they were the god of mankind. And they did all kinds of things in history that have been mistaken for the real creator, unfortunately. And when they were all physically destroyed, they're holding this ongoing forever grudge against the real creator. And because humans were chosen over them to live on this planet, they hate you with a kind of hatred that is bigger than you even know how to hate. I've been penetrated and actually felt their feelings in my aura empathically, and it is beyond the level that I knew was even possible of hatred. They hate humans to a degree you can't even imagine. So, whether they're giving the narcissistic person worldly power and success and ego and more ridiculous false confidence in themselves, or they're taking the more empathetic person and breaking them down to hate themselves in life and want to give up, they're doing it all out of hatred. They can't do anything to the infinite creator. No one can. You can't harm God, despite some of the false doctrines people believe. There's no such thing. But they can harm creation, which is a part of the creator. It's like, it's like somebody killing your puppy to get at you because they can't get at you, abusing something to hurt you. So these earthbound spirits, I'll just call them that for now. Um, they've had thousands and thousands of years to study human beings, and they even at one point, how do I put this? I'm not going to say too much here. I'm just going to say that they know more about human genetics than humans do up to this point, and they know more about human psychology than humans do. Thousands and thousands of years of uninterrupted and incredibly ambitious evil study and exploitation. They're very good at what they do, but the simple spiritual truth is true. Resist evil and it'll flee. Now, when you're suffering, they can feed from your energy, and they have to because they don't have any access to actual life anymore. They're living death. So when you feel weaker after being sad or angry or whatever, it's because you actually put off spiritual energy like auric or electric or whatever it is you want to call it, and they steal that. And if they can get you to kill yourself, I think they get an even bigger high. So don't feed them. They're parasitic now because they don't have physical forms. They can't dominate with force like they used to. The only way they can dominate this planet now is with deceit. So when you're having these intrusive thoughts, first of all, recognize they're not yours. But you need a better root philosophy of life. You would need to be told the truth that you're made in the image and likeness of God, the real creator. Therefore, you're not corrupt, you're not garbage like all the lies you've been told. But you're in a very hostile world where you can't really see what's doing this to humanity. Being that they're not physically incarnate anymore to dominate that way, it's simply a battle of consciousness and a battle of spirituality. And humanity's lost. That's why you see human puppets that aren't even human anymore doing the most wretched things to their own, supposedly. Because to them, it's not their own. Because that's not who's behind the wheel in those situations. They treat humans the way humans treat cattle. And until humans stop treating cattle that way, they're still living according to the mark of the beast, and those who accept the mark of the beast will have no rest day and night. You see how the world got to be the way it is. The Book of Revelation is not a future timeline thing. It covers all sorts of different times. It's a symbolic story about humanity. So, don't feed them. Starve the parasite until it leaves. Don't believe what they tell you about yourself or others. If you're the kind of person that likes to blame others and hurt others more than yourself, they're going to fill you. They're going to feed on that. They're going to build that up. They're going to get you to do something bad to somebody, which is ultimately doing something bad to yourself and everybody else and the creator. Like Yeshua said, whatever you've done to the least of these, you've done unto me. So whoever you think is the least of humanity, even judging them in your heart, that's an abuse. It's wrong. You just don't understand it. It's understandable that people are reviled once in a while when they're forced to see a little bit of how this world works. They're unable to blue pill themselves back out of what they've seen. But the complete lack of wisdom and the blindness, not understanding that humans are used as a battery, much like in the parable of the Matrix, but it's not machines doing this. Machines are things built by humans. Machines can be used for anything good or evil, and they have no will of their own. It's not machines, guys. It's beings that you never saw incarnated on this earth, okay? It's been a while since they were here physically, but they never left. And they've been having their way with humanity and shaping humanity in their own image. not to give humans true power. The narcissists they give worldly power to, they take more than they give. There's no winning. There's no winning by selling out to evil. Those people are husks. They're walking graveyards of death and doom. The fake smile pinned on their face to fool the public who chooses not to see very deeply into things for the most part. But it's going to get harder and harder and harder for people not to see the reality of this world. The reason there's more people than ever committing suicide or thinking about it is because, like frogs in a pot that's finally got too hot, it accelerated at a speed where people are finally recognizing something's very wrong. It's gotten harder for people that were in denial or asleep to pretend things are okay the way they are. For me, I never got to pretend. My nerves were stripped of those illusions, and I've always been living raw, seeing more than I could handle in a healthy way. But it's amazing how the actual creator, source, God, can turn that which was meant for evil into good, if that's the way you go with this with your heart. So no matter what you're going through, these beings are going to try to get you to believe it's you, you're the problem, you're the shameful, disgusting thing, and you ought to go ahead and just end your life. And if they've gotten you to do bad deeds, of course, they're going to use that to guilt you, to try to get you to end your life or someone's, or to do more harm in any fashion they can get. Stop feeding it. Stop feeding the troll. Stop feeding the parasite. Stop giving it your life. It'll have to move on. As mighty as they were in physical form, right now they're dependent on sucking etheric energy from you and I, or else it gets even worse for them. They're basically dying of thirst and hunger all the time, but can't really die. Something similar to that if they can't feed off of you and I. So stop feeding them. That's their big fear. But they've done this to themselves because they've refused to repent for what they've become and their ridiculous pride and ego. And they've shaped a lot of humanity in their image because humans don't see what's deceiving them. Humans don't see what's manipulating, what's training them, what's changing them, what's conditioning them. Okay, so these are things to be aware of. If you've been having these thoughts to kill yourself, it's because you're important to the actual creator. It's because your life is sacred. You've never been told the truth about yourself. You're not dysfunctional garbage, but when you believe that, you live a life accordingly. When your root philosophy of life is that humans suck, you'll live a life that sucks. And that's one of their many doctrines they've penetrated all angles of this planet with to make humans not understand. They use trauma and they use any negative emotion to get a grip and to feed from you. And once they find a weakness in humanity's lack of armor, they exploit it more and more and more to the utmost extreme. They can never get enough. They can never be depraved enough. Like, do you really think that the world leaders, picture this, your goal is to get real rich one day because you want to live the life. A lot of people think this way. Let's say something weird happened and you won the lottery or something and now you're a multi-billionaire. Do you think that your idea of a good time then is going to be to eat babies alive or something like that? Does that sound like the good life to you? Is that what you're aiming for as a human, trying to live the good life? Whatever you imagine the good life to be? Of course not. So why is it the people with the most worldly power do the most disgusting, stomach-turning, puke things? Because those aren't people anymore. That's not who's in charge. There's something prideful there that considers itself the top of the food chain that used to literally eat human beings, threatened to consume the whole planet in its greed, and it would have. It would have destroyed all of this creation. Now it's got humans doing its dirty work, but again, it's not really humans. Be aware. Whether you ever see or hear them or not, and you don't want to, because it's traumatic, but whether you do or not, you can observe the patterns, you can observe how this works, and you can practice real spiritual principles and watch what they do. Resist those thoughts. Don't get frustrated if you have the thought, because that's you owning it and that's what they want. Don't own destructive thoughts. Observe them. Observe them as the temptation they are, because if you entertain them, it's like entertaining a guest and letting it into your home. Don't entertain them. Resist them. Replace them with something better. Work on your root philosophy of life until it's so shining golden bright they can't stand you, because they never get to eat any energy leaks off of you. There's no dark, vapory holes in your aura anymore. Spiritual armor, real spiritual armor. Love God with all your heart, love your neighbor as yourself. In this, all the laws, all the real law, and all the real prophets are fulfilled. Easier said than done, perhaps, but practice makes perfect. Repetition, okay? Think about anybody that ever got good at anything. Repetition. Resist evil. Use the fact that it'll keep trying to put those thoughts in your mind as repetition. Build yourself up. If you practice and you build your spiritual armor against deception, eventually your immune system spiritually, just like having a physically superior immune system, things that can kill others bounce right off you. Sometimes you don't even notice because they can't mess with you. So build your spiritual immune system, friends. And don't believe the liars and all the negative things they're going to say about you and about others, because that's feeding them and that's destroying this species. And that's all they want to do, is a big double middle finger to the Creator. Don't help them do it. Now you know. Much love. Over and out for now.